All right, here we go. Hello, welcome everybody. We are just starting to let people in, so we're gonna go ahead and get started in a few minutes.
Sure.
Welcome, welcome. Happy Tuesday, everybody. All right, we'll give it another about 30 seconds and then we're gonna kick off. All right, it's a little bit after 1. We'll continue to let people in as they come in, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to say hi to everyone. My name is Gina Waldhorn. I'm the COO of the Sports Innovation Lab. And we started this Ask Me Anything series a few weeks ago in an effort to bring the industry together during what certainly is a very unprecedented time for the sports industry, for the world. And we wanted to host these AMAs to really push forward an open conversation about how the industry is going to adapt, survive, and ultimately lead through this time. So we're going to continue to bring thought leaders and people kind of pushing through different challenges from all across the industry and different industry sectors every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. And we're thrilled today to have with us Bernadette McGlade, or as we might refer to her on this call, Bernie. And I'd love to introduce her and Josh. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly bring everybody through how our Ask Me Anything works. And so you can understand exactly, if you'd like to ask a question, how you can do that. 1 minute, okay. I'm going to share my screen so that everyone can see what I'm referring to. Okay. So the way it's going to work is you're on mute, and we're going to keep you on mute. The host, myself, and Josh control that. But we're going to keep most everyone on mute so we can all hear. And if you have a question, please ask, and you're going to do that through the chat window, which I'll show you how to access that if you can't readily see it. This session is being recorded. We'll go ahead and send a video recording of this session to everyone following the AMA. And please feel free to ask both Josh and Bernadette anything that comes to mind. We'll be moderating and asking those questions on your behalf. So everyone at their screen should look towards the bottom where you will see a bar of options and you will see a chat icon that I've just highlighted. You want to go ahead and click on that. That is going to expand a window on the right side of your screen. At the bottom of that window, you'll see where it says type message here. That's where you can submit your question. You can choose to submit it to everyone, so all of the guests in the AMA can see your questions, or if you've got something you'd like to submit to the host privately, you can do that as well. And once you've submitted your question, you will see it right up there. So that's how we're going to ask our questions. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce our host and our esteemed guest. So first, we are thrilled to have Bernadette McGlade with us, who is one of the most respected and experienced leaders in all of collegiate athletics. And she entered her 12th year as the Atlantic 10 Commissioner for the 2019-2020 year. She was named commissioner in 2008. McGlade began working to shape the A10 image and branding as one of the top 10 division conferences in the country. She led the conference through the development of a 5-year strategic initiative plan that was adopted by the President's Council in 2010. Guided by the principles of membership in the strategic plan, McGlade brought Final Four participants George Mason and VCU and Elite 8 participant Davidson as new A10 members, adding academically strong basketball-centric institutions. The success of the first strategic plan led to the development of a 5-year plan in 2016. McGlade spent 11 years at the ACC prior to her arrival at the A10. And during that time, she transformed the ACC women's basketball tournament, resulting in capacity crowds while designing an extensive educational outreach program, which is still in place today. She also founded the South Atlantic Women's Basketball Officiating Program for the ACC and 3 other Division I conferences. She served on the NCAA Women's Basketball Selection Committee and chaired that committee in 1999 and 2000. She's got a lot more on her resume as well. I encourage you to go read more about Bernadette because it's really impressive, does not do it justice, and we're thrilled to have her with us today. And hosting our conversation with Bernadette is Josh Walker, who is co-founder and president of the Sports Innovation Lab, where he leads our roster of over 60 clients in how to create breakthrough fan experiences and really prepare their business for the fan of the future, something we call the fluid fan. Josh was previously the VP of Research at Forrester, where he led the development of the Forrester Wave Evaluation Framework, designed to accelerate innovation by connecting technology buyers with the best vendors. And he's really been a serial entrepreneur, using his passion for technology and data to launch several venture-backed companies, many of which have been in the sports space. And he continues to build on that technology background for the Sports Innovation Lab. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Josh and Bernadette to get us started. And please don't forget, as you have questions, please submit them into that chat box. So thanks, Josh, and welcome, Bernie.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
So Bernie, we could have spent probably the next hour on your resume. That's an impressive list of accomplishments and experience. You and I got to chat a little bit yesterday. I think that one of the things we've been trying to do, and Gina touched on this, is give everybody during this period of time a welcome distraction, but also I think we're starting to move into this period where people are starting to think about what they should be doing next. So I really hope to learn personally from your experience in the leadership roles that you've had in sports, so that I can get a better perspective on sort of what signals I should be looking at, what information I should be gathering, and how I should be rallying my team to be prepared for what's next. So before we dive into everybody's questions, I'm going to be selfish and ask a few of my own. The first question I have for you is, what are you focused on right now? Like, with everything that's going on, with all the noise, how do you make sense of it all? And what are you doing with your team to kind of focus your own attention and their attention on what matters?
Well, thank you, Josh. And it's great to be with everyone today. Really appreciate this opportunity and have a lot of respect for the initiatives that you all are doing. It's really an impressive venture, and just happy to be a part of it for this week. What I'm focusing on, number one, is certainly the membership, my membership within the Atlantic 10 Conference. My team, we are a group of 13 FTEs. Obviously, we're like a lot of people across the country and the nation right now. Everyone's working remote, so we've all become best friends with our technology. And this is a great example of things that we are doing. We actually did a town hall of our own last week via Zoom webinar, had close to 150 participants on that town hall. And we felt like it was an opportunity, I felt like it was an opportunity to just communicate directly with all of our constituents. And we have 14 member institutions, colleges and universities. We cover about 30% of the media markets in the country, and service, well over 6,000 student athletes, coaches, support, et cetera. So, trying to stay focused right now on these tumultuous times. We have all of our student athletes are gone. They're not on campus. They're not in the dorms. They're not directly seeing the people that are leading them and guiding them and teaching them day in and day out. They're not seeing those people in person. So, we're trying to be as supportive and helpful to the membership right now, keeping them informed.
When I heard about the way that you approach, working and collaborating with your presidents, with your schools, with your members, a big piece of what you did in the past was you made sure you went and visited all the presidents in their offices on their campus, and you were mindful of what that meant. in this period of time when their anxiety is high, when they rely on you and the revenue that the conference and the NCAA generates for them, what are you doing to keep that personal relationship, and how are you communicating to the schools directly?
I'm communicating directly, obviously, via not only just email and text and whatever, but actually just picking up the phone and talking to people directly. It's sometimes, I guess I feel over the last couple of years especially, we used to say writing notes and cards and letters is a lost art. In many respects, maybe picking up the telephone and talking to someone is a little bit of a lost art, because we so quickly will shoot an email off to someone or text to someone, which certainly is one less level of personalization. So trying to talk with everyone, obviously we're being very respectful of all of the personal distancing guidelines that we're receiving, here across the country. So no face-to-face meetings, but at least trying to video conference, direct phone calls. And, I've called several of the individuals at our campuses with no particular reason except to say, how are you doing? And is there anything that myself, my staff, those of us at the conference office can do to be of assistance?
And I'm sure that they're still processing a lot of this information and just trying to figure out what it means for their own institution on so many other levels, that you're just part of a bigger piece of their puzzle. What is the timeline for you to start doing things with them? Because, I think of it the way that I'm running my current business now is there's a lot of listening. There's a lot of helping people process and gain control or visibility over what they're seeing in the market. But what's your timeline when you look at April or even May? When do you start trying to shift, or when do you expect you'll start to shift into either problem solving or more tactical, we need to help our schools with some decisions?
I would say that we're already into it. I wrote an open letter to all of our student athletes and coaches. It's actually posted on the A10 website. And as compassionate and empathetic and concerned we are with the current, not only just the public health crises, but the economic crises, we cannot afford to be paralyzed. We must be able to move forward. We have to make smart, informed decisions. We are already looking at, obviously, our spring championship schedules, all of those activity, our business conference meetings in person have all been canceled or suspended in some way, shape, or form. But we're already looking at our fall schedules. We're looking at, intensely looking, obviously, at the financial picture. Even though we've lost a significant amount of revenue, as most people probably read via the NCAA distribution. And as a basketball-centric conference, we rely on that revenue from our success in the sport of men's basketball through the NCAA Championship. But we also are looking at the flip side of our budget of expenses that we are not incurring. We do team reimbursements for all of our teams traveling to championships in the springs. Obviously, we're not spending those type of dollars. So we have a massive rebalancing of our current budget. But then we're trying to, when I say we, I mean my staff and I, and certainly I'm having conference calls, briefing calls with my President's Council and athletic directors. Athletic directors was actually a couple of times a week. Now we're on once per week. President's Council is once per week. But we also are looking at how our decisions right now are going to impact our finances for next year, for the whole 2020-21 year. And when we do our revenue distribution every year at the 1st of August, our schools rely on those funds to be able to fund their own programs. So,
Right.
We've done I have to give a salute to our athletic directors and President's Council, because we've had a very robust savings and investment we call a sustainability fund. One of those things that you hope you never have to use. And sometimes people want that money distributed. And
Right.
everyone was very mindful, and we did not distribute it. So the A10 is in a unique position that is very possibly a little bit better than maybe some of our other counterpart conferences out there.
That's I mean, that's fantastic. And it's one of those things that I was going to ask you about the finances and how the NCAA is structured, but there's a lot of questions coming in from our audience that are touching on some of these topics. So let me get to some of the questions from the folks that are on with us. And again, Bernie, as you feel comfortable, you can pass or answer these questions as you see fit. So what were your thoughts on the NCAA rulings yesterday to allow spring athletes another year of eligibility, but not for winter athletes?
Well, I think that it was the right decision both ways. I think it was the right decision, and certainly to allow those spring student athletes that weren't able to participate in virtually any of their regular season competition and or their championship season to be able to have another year of eligibility. And I was quoted last night, and it was, I'm happy for those student athletes, but it's also a bittersweet because we are dealing with, so many across the country that are in some situation of their own personal health and death in many cases. So the fact that the spring student athletes received another year of eligibility is great. The winter student athletes, in all honesty, 90 to 95%, if not higher than that, have virtually completed their full seasons. There were many, more than half of the Division I conferences had finished their conference championships. The Atlantic 10 did not. We had just started, but most, half of the 32 conferences all finished a week early. So there's a small percentage of the student athletes that didn't get to compete in their championship or the NCAA, and that is tremendously disappointing and a tremendous hardship. But they certainly weren't, disadvantaged to the degree that all of the spring student athletes were.
So this is a more philosophical question that I'd like to follow on, because I think there are so many students and professional athletes, certainly Olympic athletes, that are in this situation. You coached, you played. What would be your advice, or what resources do you think are available to those athletes that are like literally need to come to, terms with some of this stuff from a mental health perspective, right? I remember when I played ball, baseball was everything, and I felt like I was living and dying based on what happened on the field. And if my season ended early, or if I got injured, like that was like the worst thing in the world to me. I can't imagine just the emotional impact on a young person who doesn't understand the severity of the public health issues that are going on. They feel like this is very personal, very, hard for them. Where do you point them? Does the conference provide resources for that? Does the NCAA provide resources for that? What should they be doing?
I think it's happening on multiple levels. Our conference, with our membership, we just had a conference call earlier this week, and we essentially did a roll call, so to speak, of what is happening on each campus as they are dealing with being supportive and being really positively constructive to provide support to all of theirs, not only just student athletes, but staff and support staff. Student athletes are losing seasons. Some full-time coaches are being moved to a part-time coaching situation. So there are a lot of different levels of disappointment and setbacks that are occurring here. So our campuses are doing yeoman's work for their own student athletes. And then at the conference office, we're looking at an initiative that we could possibly tap into all of what we are doing on campuses and perhaps make it available to the other 13 members to almost be able to really put a program together where, as you know, it's tremendously expensive, time consuming. You have to be able to secure the professionals to provide this support to the student athletes. But if we can all pool our resources and then share in the portion that we each would take responsibility for and accountability for, we're looking at trying to put together perhaps a 9-week consistent, program that could support our student athletes and staff from the area of mental health and well-being. And, somehow, some way, it's almost like individuals are passing through, like we know there's stages of grief when you lose, when there's a death that's close to you. And everyone moves through these phases of the shock and the disappointment, and then, the disbelief, and then the anger, and then what do we do to move forward? And so I think we're trying to be extremely respectful and rely on professionals to help us through this.
And I know you probably have a pretty firm grasp on your membership. Are there schools within your membership that you think are uniquely positioned from a digital perspective to serve as that resource, that drive together the conference resources to provide? Because I heard you correctly. It's triage at the campus level. Campus resources are there for their students and their student athletes primarily. And there's initiative now that might bring together resources at the conference level, which would facilitate all your members. Is there somebody in your membership that could take that role that you feel would be uniquely positioned to do that?
Well, I have 2 of my staff members right now that are basically charged with this. We have a standing committee, a student athlete wellness committee, that in the past, that committee has really been focused on things as it relates to the medical aspects of competing in sports. But that group is a group of professionals. They involve medical professionals, some of our sport trainers on our campuses, and administrators. And so we are utilizing that building committee that has representatives from all 14 campuses to see if we can't be able to provide the umbrella structure to be able to connect all the campuses and then to push this back out to everyone in a meaningful, transparent way.
Well, I don't know if you've done these Ask Me Anythings before, but they tend to bounce around. So this one's going to feel like a complete non sequitur, but I know it's something you know a lot about and have been passionate about. It's the name, image, and likeness legislation. The question is, now that this will go effect in California with 40 other states who have NIL legislation set to be addressed, what, if anything, has the A10 done to prepare for these likely changes?
We have been obviously focused on this in a very direct way for the last 18 months. We don't have a single meeting with presidents or coaches or athletic directors that we don't talk about this. So, there's a working group, as you probably know, and most everybody on this call knows, that is charged with providing a structure for how name, image, and likeness is going to be able to basically become a meaningful part of intercollegiate athletics within the legislative structure that we're currently dealing with. That group is due to give their report on April 8th. So we're literally 8 days away from the report being delivered to the entire membership. I think our members are very focused on understanding that, things have to change. Student athletes have to be able, if they have the opportunity to monetize their name, image, and likeness in regards to something in their local community or even nationally, an opportunity, that the rules are going to have to be reworked to a degree to make that possibility a reality. So our schools are aware of it. I think we are totally online together with that we are not supportive. It should not turn into a pay for play model. That's not what name, image, and likeness is all about. Colleges and universities provide scholarships to student athletes that are earning college degrees in education, but it is not to turn into, and we're not supportive of, a employer-employee relationship. So there is a clear demarcation, but clearly the NCAA rules, which is all of us as member institutions, have to be reworked to allow student athletes to take advantage and perhaps monetize their name, image, and likeness when they have that opportunity.
And Bernie, is there anything about this current situation that you think highlighted structural flaws within the collegiate sports organization in this country?
In terms of with the whole virus and the pandemic and everything, all the breaks being put on?
Not name, image, likeness. I think you've got that one well under control. And if other people have questions about that, we can continue to revisit that. But I think that issue is a little less timely right now. I know it's coming in 8 days, but it feels like there's some bigger things to address, which is the revenue distribution. There's some questions here about, how does this, industry sustain itself when there is such significant losses from the basketball tournament and other sources of revenue, obviously from national competitions that were scheduled for this spring. So you talked about a rebalancing. There's some expenses you don't have, but the revenue losses certainly have to outweigh that. So I'm thinking more structurally, when you sit back in your administrative role, do you say, man, if this wasn't the way we organized everything, we'd be in a much better position? I'll give you a chance to talk about the flip side, but for right now, it's like, what did this really highlight for you? What flaws structurally in the collegiate sports world did you see?
Well, I think what got highlighted in a super very public way is obviously the 90% of the NCAA budget is derived from the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship and the media rights contract. And the financial structure of the association at large will need to be restructured in a better way to have a minimum amount of resources that are, in investment endowment portfolios to be able to weather a storm at a minimum for a year. Like within the Atlantic 10 Conference, we have Constitution and bylaw regulations that say we are obligated to have 1 full year of expense dollars in our investment portfolio in the event that for whatever reason we didn't receive 1 penny of the revenue we were counting on. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, we are in more of a safe harbor financially. Mm-hmm. But obviously that is not the position currently with the NCAA, because we saw the public disclosure last week of the direct drop in the exact revenues that were due to be distributed right away in like 2 weeks. And it simply is not there.
And when you put that a different way, or when you think about that through the lens of revenue diversification, because you have your safe harbor, that's an insurance policy, that's good cash management, that's liquid funds for any sort of operational expenses. That's just smart. From a revenue distribution perspective, so that you're not totally dependent on this one tournament, what is the best hope for the NCAA to create those other forms of revenue?
Well, the NCAA, there are challenges. There are different streams of revenue that can be, derived. The biggest obvious stream that is not under the, purview of the NCAA is the college football playoffs, and again, all of the support services for Division I collegiate football, all those expenses are paid out of the NCAA, out of the association's budget. However, the revenues that come from the college football playoff, don't go through the NCAA. They go directly to the CFP playing membership. And, so that is, that's a challenge that within my profession, within the intercollegiate profession, it's talked about often. Organizations like the Knight Commission and the Aspen Institute have kind of put a bright light on that situation. And there's going to need to be some balancing of, return on investments and expenses that are paid out, where is the, the return on that investment at some point in time.
So just to put a fine point on that, if I understand it correctly, even though college football, NCAA, when they get to playoff time, that's only distributed to the schools that make the playoffs?
The majority of it, not only the schools that made the playoff, but certainly the group of schools that are the FBS playing institutions. There's 65 institutions within the largest 5 conferences. And then there's another subset of conferences that receive distribution through those funds, but they're all football playing institutions, where there's 11 conferences, one of which the Atlantic 10 is one of the 11, that we are basketball centric, and we don't sponsor football in any form. So there's no alternative revenue stream coming from that sport.
So I promised you I'd ask you the flip side of it. What good parts about the collegiate organization structure came to the forefront in this period of time? What things about the community, about the way that conferences are structured, or the way that the administrations work, or the way that the student athletes are supported, did this feel like we were in the right position to take care of each other?
I think the collegiality, the compassion, the empathy that immediately transpired. I know just even from the colleagues, it was devastating, for the Atlantic 10, for myself and my staff to have to put the brakes on our championship when we were ready to tip off on day 2. And there was a series of other conferences that had to do the same thing, the Big Ten, the ACC, the SEC. We were all in the same boat. And the fact that the men's basketball coaches, those student athletes, as devastated as they were, and trust me, there were some devastated student athletes in that situation. I look at a team like Dayton in the A-10 that had this remarkable season that all of a sudden just got stopped abruptly. And you couldn't help to feel the pain. But when I tell you, the coaches and all the commissioners and everyone stood together with the fact that we knew there was something bigger happening. We knew we had to do what was right for the country. And I know that sounds almost grandiose, but it was important for sports to step up and continue to be part of this solution that we're all still dealing with.
Yeah, I know you were actively involved in the '96 Olympics. You understand the power of sports from the national perspective. Do you see that in your management, in your coaches and the administrators? They're rallying behind you, or are you getting resistance on some of the decisions you're making?
No, they are absolutely rallying behind. Of course, being a former coach, I'll say the coaches are always pushing. They always want something a little bit. Yeah. There's a lot of ingenious proposals coming forward, like virtual workouts and, can I actually send my staff to be training a student athlete from 12 feet away across the street in their neighborhood, those types of things. So some of that is happening, and you have to admire that deep down. But no, I, at least in my role with the Atlantic 10, and I've been on commissioner calls, CCA calls twice a week, and with NCAA leadership, there hasn't been a single resistance to anyone, and everyone knows that we need a lot of consensus. And you know what? Everybody's got to feel the squeeze. Everybody has to understand that this is not, intercollegiate athletics is not the biggest thing on the face of the earth right now. Right. We have to do our jobs and keep everything going in the right direction. But there are other bigger things that we need to continue to be engaged in, whether it's within our communities, or, within our regions or the country.
So one of the questions that came in was about the A-10 potentially discussing a 20-game conference schedule. How far along are those discussions, and will the coronavirus affect that decision?
Actually, that's a really insightful question. I'll answer the first part. The discussions have been going on for the last year and a half. We have talked about that with our basketball coaches. We've talked about it in our business meetings with our athletic directors. And there are a lot of practical reasons why 20-game conference schedule is important and could be very important for the A-10. One is we're a very big league. We're 14 teams. There's another league, ACC has 15, but we have a lot of teams, so we can absorb a 20-game conference schedule in a really positive way. But secondarily, the strength of the league. We finished, especially this year, we finished extremely strong with high national rankings, and there is a benefit to be able to schedule more games within your conference as long as your teams are strong enough, of which the A-10 is. Now you get to the virus, and what was not a primary driving factor, which is cost. Our schools weren't thinking about this. They were thinking about it more in terms, we've been talking about it from a competitive environment and from an ability to address the non-conference shrinkage of games that are available to be scheduled. Now, all of a sudden with the virus, it becomes an additional add-on from a financial standpoint, because if everyone gets 2 more games on their schedule through the conference schedule, then that's 2 less non-conference games. And often at least one of those games could have been a game that you were paying for, that a school was guaranteeing for a team to come in and play so that they could fill out their home season ticket schedule. So now all of a sudden you have a school that would not be paying a guarantee game, which, can range anywhere from, $80,000 to $100,000. And that's a meaningful chunk of change that an institution can either redirect into another area, or if in this case, perhaps an institution might not even have right now for 1 year.
My company's been following the effects of COVID-19 on the sports industry's loss of revenue on our website. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. One of the things that we've struggled, Bernie, to monitor or extrapolate is the loss that the college national championships mean to the industry, from a loss of revenue in media rights or attendance or hospitality. Can you give us a sense of how big those spring sport national championships are in terms of revenue?
I can. I think we're most familiar with the men's and women's basketball championships, and the NCAA, the men's championship is unto its own with Turner and CBS and that rights fee. And then all the other championships, women's basketball and then baseball and baseball and softball and all the spring championships are all wrapped up together in a big ESPN contract with a whole different set of rights fees.
Do they add up? I mean, is it like a meaningful number? Is it a big number?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. You're in the hundreds of millions. It's meaningful.
Yeah.
It's meaningful.
Well, it pales in comparison to the billion that everybody talks about when they talk about the basketball. But we've been looking for data that would say, wow, all these national championships would definitely have added up from media rights. But also, I have to imagine that there's a lot of on-site activation of those national sponsors and things of that nature that get
absolutely involved. Yeah, all the corporate partners activated all of those championships, and then you think about all of those communities and the economic impact of the College World Series in Omaha and all
the
of
local
those.
impact.
I mean, they are quite staggering, the numbers, the financial impact of all of the championships put together when you subtract the fact that none of them can activate and be held.
So there's going to be a lot of talk about layoffs. There's going to be a lot of talk about underfunded school resources and things of that nature. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of talk about cutting sports and programs. There's a question here that says, is there a risk of non-revenue generating college sports programs being cut with Title IX? Would this disproportionately hit men's Olympic sports?
Well, I think the possibility is there. Yes, there's always a possibility because there are minimum sports sponsorship standards that everyone must meet if you're going to be a Division I member. And once you have those minimums, if you exceed that, you're welcome to exceed it. But if you do exceed it, there's always a possibility that there could be a reduction. In terms of Title IX, that's going to have to be, each institution is going to have to manage that on their own. I would like to think that most institutions are so cognizant. Title IX has been on the forefront of the intercollegiate athletic space truly for the last 20 years. So I don't think that there's going to be a tremendous imbalance there. And in all honesty, I think the number one priority for most institutions are not to have to reduce and cut opportunities for student athletes at all, which includes all of the Olympic male sports that are still being sponsored. From the best of my indications, most institutions are really trying to look at, can we reduce things that are non-essential but are not affecting the experience of our undergraduate student population and / our undergraduate student athlete experiences.
So as we discussed briefly yesterday, the Sports Innovation Lab's whole, drum to beat in this industry, our soapbox is that, the sports industry is a technology laggard. They haven't invested as much perhaps as other industries have in virtualizing a lot of their experiences and a lot of their systems. When you look at the byproduct of this period of time, do you think that some of the conversations that you've had with your colleagues and your peers in the industry about those computer people and those data people and a lot of the things that like people say when they're like, we really don't need that stuff yet. Do you think that changes philosophically? Do you think that there'll be a much bigger willingness to embrace some of the technology or even invest in some of those skills in-house?
I do. I think there's going to be a paradigm change within the work environment. I think there's going to be a lot of small operations or conference office or whatever that are going to, after seeing how we all are functioning right now and using technology, because quite frankly, we're forced to. Yeah. And all of a sudden this realization of, why are we spending, north of $100,000 in office lease space when, we have every employee set up with technology working literally from any space, in the region. And, I think that the true answer is going to be is if we can, effectively do our jobs, effectively deliver our services, effectively be able to support whoever it is, whether it's a conference office or an institution. But yes, I think that the embracing and advancement right now that everyone in our sector is experiencing it related to technology is doing nothing but flourishing.
And I've heard you speak before. You're a big 5-year strategic plan person. Do you think that this need for technology makes it so that Bernie starts hiring a bunch of technology people on her team? Or does it mean that you rely on Learfield and your other partners that you already have like a consulting or digital relationship with to pick up some of that responsibility? Is it both? Where's your head?
Yeah, I think it can be a combination of both. I think contract services are extremely valuable, but I also think it's going to impact the type, from an HR standpoint, the type of individuals we all hire. I think gone are the days of having individuals that are just at any way, shape, or form refusing to embrace technology and how to best utilize it. So yeah. I do think it's going to be a combination of both.
I mean, there's a whole generation of people that made their way up from the ranks. I mean, you started as a 23-year-old coach and you made your way up to where you are today. Does this change the way you recruit?
Recruit in terms of staff people, or recruit in terms of athletes?
No, in terms of staff people, in terms of your organization, in terms of the people that are going to help run and maintain the operations of a vibrant conference.
Yes, yeah, I think so. And, there are certain aspects of our work that have been changing rapidly over the past, I would say the past decade, and maybe more so in even the last six years or so, especially in the area of our external communication, advanced media, social media, the traditional position of the sports information director that was so familiar to everyone at every college and university and conference office. I'm dating myself when I was in school, but even 17 years when I was at Georgia Tech. I mean, I felt like when Atlanta hosted the Olympics in '76, and we had tremendous success at Georgia Tech, but seeing that onslaught of how the Olympics runs, the machinery and the technology, I think it just leapfrogged our whole institution and the whole region, and Atlanta has never looked back since then.
Right. Digital ticketing, all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. All of that. Fingerprinting. We didn't have credentials. We weren't putting things around our necks. We were using fingerprints and handprints and eye retinas and all that. And, so I do think that that will continue to go forward, and it will make a difference in the type of individuals you are hiring within the workplace.
Well, I love this question for Drew, and it's kind of getting us toward the end of the hour here. So it's a good one, but I think Drew thinks you might have a crystal ball. So I'll ask his question for you, and you can pretend you're the best oracle in the building. So there's been other periods of time where there's been tragedy, where there's been stoppages, strikes, labor, terrorism, things that have definitely thrown us off our game. When you think about sort of where college athletics is 5 years from now, coming out of this, what do you think is the biggest change you expect to see?
I think that there's going to be an impressive and a tremendous resiliency that we're going to see out of college athletics. I think there's going to be a greater appreciation. I love the saying, never underestimate the will of the human spirit. And I think right now you're seeing a tremendous amount of that. I do think that in some respects, maybe college athletics was lagging behind a little bit in certain ways of innovation, and especially in terms of fan experience, et cetera. And I do think that all of that will be moved to yet another level once we resume some sense of normalcy, whenever that is.
And when you think about what you want for your own team in the next few months, what would be the key message to them? I mean, what I struggle with my own team is obviously recognizing that they're working at home. They've got kids. A lot of them are doing homeschooling and really just trying to balance life right now. How do you think about that, just as not only just a leader, but as a manager on a day-to-day perspective?
I think it's really important to appreciate and to understand all of the pressures that your team is going through. And at this point, we laughed. My team, we obviously had a video conference this morning, our typical Tuesday morning staff meeting, and one of my young staffers has a young child, and we laughed and we were like, hey, Tom, is Charlie going to come running in the back of the, room where you have your headsets on? And, I think that you have to understand that the world doesn't begin and end only with your workday and your responsibilities, that people have a lot of capacity to get a lot of work done throughout the course of 24 hours. And it might not only just be, 9 to 5 during the day. So I think that that's going to be, that's important. And I think your team has to, really understand and appreciate that working remote is not a holiday for anyone. In many respects, I think we all think, gosh, we've got to get back to our office so we can get a rest. Working at home are long hours. No. And I think everybody realizes that.
Yeah, I'm shocked at how exhausted I am at the end of the day. Bernie, is there anything else you want to touch on while you have this audience in front of you? Really appreciate you joining, and everybody, I appreciate you asking such insightful questions. Is there anything you want to wrap up with?
No, I would just say, that certainly I think this is a most important time that everybody in all sectors really have to, be really smart and informed. We've got to, not only take care of ourselves and our families, but our enterprises, our own companies, our own business, our own communities. And, there are bigger things right now that are going on in the world and the United States that, quite frankly, 3 weeks ago, none of us would have even imagined. And so, the mental stability, and I think it's important too, to keep on some sort of your own routine. You have to, you can't be anxious and panicky 24 hours a day, and you still need to go and get your walk in or get your exercise in and keep a very good perspective and, stay together. There's nothing like teamwork.
Well, I can't reiterate that enough, and I really appreciate you giving everybody on this call that period of their day to think about something other than what's in the news. This was fantastic, and I'm sure that everyone learned as much as I did. So thank you again for joining us. Gina, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. That was truly very inspiring, and I think something we all need to hear. So I've just posted in the chat window, we continue the conversation every day, all day on our Slack community. So if you haven't joined, we'd love to see you there. It's on my screen right now, as well as a link posted in the chat window, a place to foster a conversation, share advice. We post research. You can post your own research in there in terms of lots of polls are taking place. So please come collaborate and help drive this industry forward through this unprecedented time in our Slack community. And then join us on Thursday. We will be joined by Nicholas Horbacheski, the founder and CEO of the Drone Racing League, and he's going to have with him Chris Cruz, his department chair for park management, geospatial, and unmanned aircraft technology. They just launched an incredible new program called the Drone Racing Academy. It's going out not only to schools when they're in session, but they've created all of the curriculum available online for homeschooling. And, a league that's truly pushing, the boundaries of sport. Nicholas has a very unique perspective. So please join us Thursday at 1 p.m. for that, we'll go ahead and be sending out an invite and post a place for you to register for that on our Slack community as well. Thanks, everybody. Please stay safe, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you,
Thanks,
Bernie.
Bernie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.